what drug abuse actually is.
Okay.
It's either a drug or a substance. So it's a substance abuse or it's a drug abuse. Ordinarily, what comes to mind when somebody says drug abuse is when you use a medication beyond its use. And I'm not just using it beyond its use, misusing it, meaning if you are asked to take 2 tablets 3 times a day, you take 2 tablets 4 times a day.
Right.
Or you take 1 tablet 3 times a day.
So as minor as that, it's already edging into abuse.
Already edging into abuse. Now the abuse that people's mind tend to go to is not this abuse that I've just described.
Yeah.
This abuse, in medical term, is not an abuse per se. It's non-compliance.
Yeah. Okay.
You're not complying with the dosage regimen for that particular medication.
Okay.
Now, drug abuse, what the real drug abuse, the real substance abuse that we want to talk about today is the patterned use. When you use a substance in a patterned format in such a way that it causes harm to you and causes harm to other people around you. Psychological harm, social harm, physical harm. That is when we're talking about the actual drug abuse that breaks home, families, and causes death.
I've heard that alcohol is a drug.
Yes, it is.
Please explain.
Now, the substance abuse or the drug abuse that we're looking at today, we're not talking about the abuse of anti-malaria or antibiotics or painkillers, paracetamol. We're talking about the abuse of substances like alcohol, like cannabis, like marijuana, like cocaine, like heroin, like stimulants, hallucinogens, inhalants, cough syrup, like she talked about, antihistamines. High is when, I have never been high, but I can give you
as a doctor,
idea.
you may have encountered
It is
people
when you are in dissociated state.
You don't have control of yourself.
You're in a dissociated state. As if you're floating on air. Everything is rosy. Nobody can do you any harm.
Life is so
You
good.
can conquer the world.
Who are addicted to painkillers.
Yes.
And they keep taking it. But I'm wondering, is it drug abuse if I'm still feeling the pain and I still need that drug to help me feel better?
It is drug abuse if you are taking it beyond the scope. People react differently to these medications. For you,
that
it makes
must
you
be the only
nauseous.
explanation.
For some other people, it makes them high and fly.
Okay.
That is why we have people like organizations like AA and NA.
Yes.
Narcotics Anonymous and Alcoholic Anonymous.
Do you have them in Nigeria?
We have them in Nigeria.
Oh, really?
We
Support
do.
groups
But
like
they are-
that?
Yes, we do, but they are inconsistent and small.
Right.
They are inconsistent and small, and they are still very much under the radar. They are hiding.
Why?
And who wants to be stigmatized?
That's another thing.
Nobody wants to be stigmatized. Now, what are the behavioral changes? Very easy. We talked about personal hygiene the other day. They begin to, show signs of not being cared for or looked after.
Okay.
They let their hygiene slip. They don't sleep at night. They are fidgeting
Restless.
all the time. They begin to cut school. They can't look you in the eye. Things begin to get missing from home, especially monies and valuables, because they need to maintain that habit.
Yeah.
They are sleeping excessively
Or not
they can't
sleeping at all.
and they're agitated.
Yeah.
They are talkative. They are impulsive.
Wondering, as parents, for instance, are we being a little too lax?
I know what the
Is it
problem
possible?
is. Let me tell you what the problem is. All of us, man, woman, and child, in some way, have compromised our values. We have all become complicit in one form or the other.
Yes.
Instead of us to be mothers, we are friends.
I tire.
Instead of us to be fathers,
Preach.
we are buddies. So we are.
It's like having a popularity contest in the house.
And the society has become gradually too permissive. Everything goes. A man and a woman that are supposed to go through the normal rites of marriage, introduction, dowry, traditional wedding, white wedding, court wedding, woman just jumps into the man's house and they start living together and breeding kids.
Our values.
Do you know that as at 2015, of course, statistics in Nigeria is a bit, not there. We have, paucity of, data on drug abuse and substance abuse. But worldwide, 27 million people are currently addicted to one form of substance or the other. The same 2015 statistics puts the people who attempted one drug or the other in the form of abuse at 600 million.
Okay, so the 27 million are the ones who are already successfully addicted.
Currently addicted.
Then the 600 million are the ones
Tried.
who are actually
Tried
their way
something.
toward.
Yes.
Yeah.
and they found out some of them died, some of them found out they don't like it, the others became addicted, and the other people walked away. Now, how many people died in that same year, 2015? And I was asking us to guess how many people died.
Tell us.
500,000. About highly, promiscuous behavior.
Yeah.
Which is
I understand that
Highly
particularly
promiscuous
comes out with
behavior.
girls.
Because, like I
Yeah.
said earlier,
It
this
does.
is like a spectrum. It goes from substance abuse to addiction, and when the person becomes addicted, it's a whole different story. It's a whole different story. From engaging in high risk sexual behavior, coming down with STDs, unwanted babies that they will have,
Losing your job.
push the babies out, dump them in a trash, go and look for the next fix.
So, if I do find out that my teenager is abusing a substance, tell me about a typical mommy intervention. What am I supposed to do? Do I meet the child up front? Do I get the man of the house, the daddy of the child involved? Because it could ricochet, it could go the wrong way.
Yes, and we
The
don't
child
want that.
could get violent. So how would you advise anyone listening that, okay, I think my son has a problem, what do I do now?
Now the thing is, you don't think that your son has a problem.
You have to confirm.
You have proof that your
Okay.
son has a problem.
Okay.
Let's take, for instance, your child is hooked on cough syrup, is hooked on methylated spirits, and is hooked on coffee. And I don't mean the kind of coffee that somebody will say, if I don't take 3 cups of coffee a day, my day has not started. I mean the one of that little Nescafe tin. The child takes it in 1 second. That is what I mean by being hooked.
Wow.
Now you gather your evidence. We all have phones with cameras. You gather your evidence so that this child will not use bravado and say, Mom is a lie, it's a lie, it's a lie. You gather your evidence.
Okay, so that certainly involves a certain degree of spying.
Of course, we are allowed to spy on our kids.
We're allowed to spy.
You live in my
I think
home.
we're allowed
You
to spy.
live in my
If
home.
you're under 18, I'm spying
It's
on
not
you.
even under 18. You live in my home. We live in Nigeria. You're under 21. I can spy on you. Because I'm spying
That's
on
the only
you.
way you get to find out
I am
anything.
spying on you for your own good.
Like they say on
I
social
want
media,
you
come
to
and beat me.
I want you to be a useful citizen.
Citizen,
in future. So I will spy on you.
Yeah.
Now, when I gather my evidence, I take the evidence to Daddy. And I say to Daddy, this is what I have noticed over the past few weeks or over the past few months. And I have gathered this evidence and I want us to have an intervention. We're going to stage an intervention. And now, the staging of the intervention that we're going to do is in such a way that it will not have a boomerang effect, like she said. Now, that son must have a friend or someone that he looks up to,
Yeah.
that he is afraid to disappoint.
Yeah.
Now we're going to also get that person
Involved.
in the intervention.
Yeah.
I've heard that if you go out clubbing and you come home with just to prevent a hangover the next morning, before you go to bed, you should take paracetamol to go to bed. And then I have a friend also who, out of exhaustion and stress, after a very long day, she takes Panadol before she goes to bed, just because she's used to it already. How do you stop that?
That is both misuse and abuse.
Yeah. And there are natural ways to, relieve all these pressures without taking drugs.
Like
Yeah.
You could just
Take a cold drink.
cold
hot bath.
drink. Hot bath.
aromatherapy.
Aromatherapy.
Yes.
It could
Massage,
be even the
burning of
music.
incense
It could even
sometimes
be
it
music.
relaxes
Even
me.
something
If I'm
that
stressed,
suits you.
I
Even
burn a
cocoa.
few
Something that
scented
suits you.
candles.
Even cocoa. A cup of cocoa.
Okay,
Milo. Bonvita. Ovaltine. They are going to have to pay us for this cheap
Yes.
commercial.
Yeah, for me,
Cheap
milk works
publicity.
for me.
Dr. B, what about like the extreme consequences of drug abuse? I mean, some people actually start to lose.
Some people end up in the psychiatry.
In our discussion,
Their
we've already
minds.
covered the consequences. So, but let's recap the consequences. First of all, hygienically, you begin to deteriorate. You look like a crazy person. You don't take a bath. You don't comb your hair. You don't use any of the nice perfumes you used to use before. People begin to run away from you because you smell. All right, you lose your job. You can't keep a job. You lose your job. You drop out of school. Okay, now you become depressed. You begin to steal, commit suicide, kill other people, rape, engage in high-risk sexual behavior, come down with STDs, including HIV, and of course, we talked about death. People who survive all of these, they become mentally, deranged, or they are depressed, and they are thrown into the psychiatric ward and they are forgotten.
What about intervention? Is it good for you to, when you have a child that is going through all this drug abuse, addiction, is it advisable for you to take a child to this institution that they usually call
rehab,
that helps as a rehab institution.
Oh yes, that is the next.
Because
logical
most
step.
times when they go out of it back to their own society, it's like a relapse.
Do we have rehabs?
Do we have exactly?
We do. We actually have, but they are
We
few and
have.
far between.
We have.
And are they functional?
They are,
As
they are
functional as they should
functional
be?
as
Like in the north,
they are
I think
functional,
they
but
mix it with the religious aspect.
Of course,
Yes,
in
the
Nigeria,
religious
you
aspect,
cannot,
and then
you
they will
cannot,
have-
remove
They
religion.
can't separate
yeah.
the
You cannot
two.
separate religion from everything that we do,
yeah.
and it helps. That is our own way.
But
They
I've
do
seen a
have-
case where after intervention, like after the rehab, 3 months back to the society, back to the community,
and
access
the
to
person has
everything.
relapsed.
Yeah,
That's the
no,
thing.
there are
Yes,
still
that's-
relapses.
There are relapses, there are cases of relapses, but there are cases of people who have
There's
you know,
success, yes,
successful.
successful.
And these people that are successful,
I think you have to show them so much love.
You have to
when they come back,
understand,
yeah,
because you're
understanding,
trying to
and then you have
reintegrate
to
and rehabilitate.
exactly
Yes.
know what works for him, mental. You know, you have to understand their mental.
Because at the core of the treatment package is to reintegrate the person back into society and then go back and become a human being. What do I mean by that? If you were in school and you dropped out, you find a way to go back to school. If you decide you do not want to go back and get a formal education, then you go and get an informal education. But you must be meaningfully engaged in one form of commerce or the other. Otherwise, you'll be tempted again to fall back.